Imagine for a moment that your brain is a spotlight. It's constantly scanning the environment, deciding what to focus on, what to ignore, and what to store for later. But that spotlight doesn't move randomly. It's guided. It's directed by something far more fundamental than willpower or motivation. It's guided by your senses, especially hearing and balance. These two systems, often taken for granted, are actually among the most powerful levers we have to control attention, enhance learning, and stay locked into what matters. Now, we typically think of hearing as something passive. We hear things because they're loud or nearby, but the auditory system is deeply linked to our state of alertness. When you hear a sudden sound, your brain snaps to attention. That's not a coincidence. That's your nervous system using auditory input as a tool to shift your cognitive state. Sound is not just about perception, it's about readiness. It primes the brain to detect changes, to assess threats or opportunities, and to orient toward what's important. The balance system, or the vestibular system, is just as crucial, though it's even more overlooked. It tells us where we are in space, whether we're upright, moving, still, or off-center. It's constantly sending information to the brain about our position relative to gravity. This system, anchored in the inner ear, plays a quiet but essential role in keeping us alert and engaged. It's so central, in fact, that when the vestibular system is disrupted, like when someone gets dizzy or motion sick, their cognitive abilities take a hit. Focus drops, learning becomes harder, and even basic tasks can feel overwhelming. That's not coincidence. That's how fundamental balance is to the stability of our entire cognitive network. So why are these two systems so tied into focus and learning? Because they form the foundation of our sensory orientation. Before we can pay attention to a math problem or a paragraph of text, the brain has to know where it is, what's happening around it, and whether it's safe and still. That's the job of hearing and balance. They stabilize the brain's internal environment so that it can devote energy to higher functions like reasoning, memory, and language. Without that sensory anchor, the spotlight of attention drifts, it wanders. But when these systems are active and well-tuned, the spotlight locks in, it holds. You've likely experienced this without even realizing it. Have you ever noticed how silence can sometimes be distracting, while a gentle background hum like music or a fan can actually help you focus? That's auditory anchoring in action. Or think about how hard it is to concentrate when you're swaying on a train or feeling seasick. That's a disruption of your vestibular system. In both cases, when these inputs are stable, your brain feels more stable too. And when they're not, everything else becomes harder. These systems also help regulate arousal, how alert or calm you are. Certain frequencies of sound can dial up alertness, while others can help settle you down. Similarly, subtle movement through space, walking, rocking, even just shifting your head can reset your internal state. This isn't just about comfort, it's about control. These sensory systems give you direct access to your own cognitive performance. They're like volume knobs for focus. And once you know how to use them, you can dial in your learning state far more effectively than by simply trying harder. It's not magic, it's biology. The brain is wired to respond to sound and motion because those inputs have always meant survival. But now in a classroom, a work environment, or even while learning on your own, they can mean clarity, engagement, and success. If you want to learn better, think more clearly, or sustain focus longer, start by tuning into the systems that guide your brain's spotlight. That spotlight doesn't move on its own. It follows your senses. Use them well, and the brain follows. This is how hearing and balance become powerful tools for learning and focus. If you really want to understand how we focus, you have to start by looking at sound, not as background noise, not as a distraction, but as a direct input to your nervous system. The auditory system is one of the fastest, most finely tuned systems in the entire body. Sound reaches the brain faster than visual information, and it does more than just help you recognize voices or enjoy music. It shapes your internal state. It cues your brain about when to pay attention, when to relax, and when to encode information more deeply. Let's break that down a little. When a sound enters the ear, it's converted into electrical signals almost instantly. And those signals don't just go to the part of the brain that processes hearing. They hit areas involved in attention, alertness, and memory, like the reticular activating system and the hippocampus. What this means is that sound can alter your brain's level of arousal, and that shift in arousal changes how well you can focus and learn. This is why certain types of sound, like rhythmic patterns or tones in the beta wave frequency range, can actually increase your ability to concentrate. These aren't just effects we feel, they're effects we can measure in EEG and fMRI studies. Brainwave activity changes in real time depending on the type of auditory input you receive. There's a reason why people instinctively turn to music or background noise when trying to study or work. It's not just habit, it's regulation. The brain uses sound as a way to gate attention. If the environment is too quiet, the brain starts scanning for input. It becomes more distractible. But if there's a consistent auditory pattern, something predictable and non-threatening, the brain relaxes. It stops looking for danger and it shifts resources toward cognitive processing. So the right kind of sound doesn't just block out distractions, it actually makes learning easier. But there's a balance. Not all sound is helpful. Speech, for example, especially if it's intelligible and nearby, is extremely distracting. That's because the brain is wired to decode language. You can't really choose not to listen to a conversation once you understand the language being spoken. It pulls your attention automatically. This is why ambient noise works better than music with lyrics. When you're trying to focus, not about volume, it's about predictability. The more predictable a sound is, the more it can fade into the background while still keeping your brain alert enough to work efficiently. There's also a powerful connection between rhythm and cognitive performance. Rhythmic sounds, especially those around 40 hertz, have been shown to enhance gamma wave activity in the brain. Gamma waves are associated with high-level cognitive functioning, like working memory, problem solving, and learning. So if you've ever found yourself getting into a deep flow state while listening to a steady beat or instrumental soundtrack, you are tapping into something very real. That rhythm was syncing with your brainwaves and pulling your focus into alignment. You can use this intentionally. For example, if you're about to dive into deep work or study, start by listening to a track that slowly ramps up in tempo and intensity, something with a consistent beat but no lyrics. Give it a few minutes and you'll feel your mind begin to sharpen. You're not just getting in the mood, you're engaging a neural mechanism that prepares your brain to retain and apply information more effectively. Even silence has a role. Strategic silence, especially after a period of focused auditory stimulation, can help consolidate learning. It's like the brain uses that quiet space to reorganize and store what it just absorbed. So alternating between sound and silence in a structured way gives your brain a rhythm to follow, one that naturally enhances attention and memory. Sound is more than just an experience, it's a tool. And when you start thinking about it that way, you can use it to shape your mental state on demand. Whether it's music, tones, or just structured background noise, auditory input can prime your nervous system for optimal focus and deeper learning. The key is to be deliberate, listen with purpose, and your brain will respond in kind. When we talk about focus and learning, we usually jump straight to the brain, cognitive effort, memory, attention systems. But before any of that kicks in, there's something even more fundamental that has to be in place: physical stability. Not just mental stability, but a literal sense of where you are in space. That sense comes from your balance system, your vestibular system. And it turns out that balance is not just about staying upright or walking in a straight line. It's a signal to the brain that says we're ready. The vestibular system lives deep in the inner ear, and it works around the clock to help the brain understand orientation, motion, and gravity. It's constantly sending information to areas of the brain that regulate posture, eye movement, and motor control, but also to areas that regulate attention and executive function. This system is like the foundation of a house. If it's solid, everything built on top of it can function well. But if the foundation is shaky, if you feel disoriented or unsteady, then higher level thinking starts to suffer. You've probably experienced this without even noticing it. Think about how hard it is to concentrate when you're on a boat and the waves are rough, or when you're spinning in a chair and then trying to read something immediately afterward. The brain doesn't want to process complex ideas when the body doesn't know where it is. That's because the brain prioritizes safety and orientation first, focus comes second. When your vestibular system says, we're off balance, the brain diverts attention away from learning and into recalibration. Now, what's fascinating is how tightly connected this system is to our ability to learn. The vestibular system feeds into the cerebellum, a brain region traditionally associated with movement, but we now know it's also deeply involved in learning, prediction, and pattern recognition. That means that how you move, and more specifically, how well your balance system is calibrated, can influence how well you take in new information. It's one of the reasons why physical movement, especially movement that challenges balance, can actually enhance cognitive flexibility and focus. This is why children often learn better after recess or physical play. It's not just about burning off energy. It's about activating systems that prepare the brain for structured cognitive tasks. Movement primes learning. The simple act of walking, tilting your head, or engaging in balance-rich activities like yoga, dancing, or even standing on one foot while brushing your teeth sends powerful signals to the brain that say, "We're here, we're stable, let's go." This doesn't have to be complicated. One of the fastest ways to shift your state into focus is to use light movement that engages the vestibular system. This can be something as subtle as head tilts or slow rotations. You can try this before studying. Close your eyes, slowly turn your head side to side, then nod up and down, gently and with awareness. You're not stretching, you're activating the balance system. That tiny movement tells your brain, I know where I am, I'm safe, let's lock in. Even posture plays a role. Upright posture with feet grounded and head balanced over the spine sends a different signal to the nervous system than slouching or leaning back. It's not just a body language thing, it changes how the vestibular system reports to the brain. That alignment supports better focus by reinforcing physical and cognitive readiness. There's also a timing element. The vestibular system responds best in early parts of the day, when movement and wakefulness interact with rising levels of cortisol and alertness hormones. That's why morning walks, light balance exercises, or dynamic stretching are so effective at setting the tone for learning. You're literally tuning your brain through movement. We often assume that focus is purely mental, something we will ourselves into. But in truth, focus begins in the body with systems like balance that stabilize our internal sense of control. When the body feels ready, the brain is far more likely to engage. And when the vestibular system is online, the cognitive systems that support learning are far more efficient. This is how balance becomes a powerful, often underutilized key to unlocking deeper focus and better learning. One of the most powerful ways to enhance learning and sharpen focus is by combining multiple senses. When we hear something and feel it, or when we move and listen at the same time, the brain lights up in a very different way than when we're just sitting still staring at a screen or a page. This is the beauty of multisensory integration. It's how your brain blends information from different systems like hearing and balance to create a more complete, more vivid picture of the world. And when you leverage that integration intentionally, you tap into a deeper level of learning. This isn't just about being more engaged, it's about building stronger neural connections. When your auditory system and your vestibular system are activated together, they feed into overlapping circuits in the brain. Those circuits include areas involved in attention, memory, and even language comprehension. So when you're listening while moving, or when sound is synchronized with motion, you're not just doing two things at once, you're enhancing how those things are encoded in the brain. That's why something as simple as walking while listening to a podcast or a lecture can be far more effective than sitting in silence. Your balance system is active because you're moving through space. Your auditory system is processing spoken information. And together, those systems create a dynamic neural environment that's optimized for learning. It's not passive, it's participatory. You're not just hearing, you're embodying the learning experience. The brain loves this kind of stimulation because it mimics how we evolve to learn through movement, interaction, and engagement with the physical world. So think about how kids naturally learn by touching, running, exploring, asking questions out loud. They don't sit still unless we make them. That's not just restlessness. It's the body seeking sensory input to feed the brain. And adults are no different. We may train ourselves to sit and work for long periods, but the systems that support learning, like the vestibular and auditory systems, still crave interaction. And when they're activated together, learning sticks. This also explains why certain environments are more mentally stimulating than others. A quiet room with no movement tends to dull the senses. But a walk outside where you're listening to the crunch of leaves underfoot, adjusting your balance with every step, and maybe taking in new information through your ears, that's multisensory learning in action. It's richer, more memorable, and far more engaging for the brain. And it's not just about physical movement. Even subtle shifts like gently swaying while standing or slowly turning your head while listening can enhance the sensory input your brain receives. You're providing your nervous system with more data, more context, and that makes the experience of learning more robust. It deepens focus by giving the brain more to work with. We tend to separate the senses when we talk about focus and cognition, but the brain doesn't work that way. It craves convergence. It thrives when different systems are working together in harmony. So if you want to optimize how you learn or sharpen your focus naturally, the answer isn't just to sit still and concentrate harder. The answer is to move, to listen, to engage multiple systems at once, because that's how the brain learns best. If you want to train your focus and improve your ability to learn, it helps to think of hearing and balance as systems you can condition, just like muscles. They're not fixed. They respond to use, repetition, and challenge. And with the right kind of training, they become sharper, faster, and more reliable tools for mental performance. You don't have to completely change your routine to do this. Small, intentional habits are often the most powerful way to enhance these systems. So let's start with sound. Most people don't think of hearing as something you can train, but your auditory system is highly adaptable. For example, listening to complex soundscapes like instrumental music with layered rhythms or spatial audio that shifts across headphones helps refine the way your brain locates and filters sound. This isn't just good for enjoyment, it teaches your nervous system how to prioritize certain inputs over others, which is a critical skill for attention. Over time, this kind of training makes it easier to stay focused in noisy environments or to lock in on a speaker's voice in a crowded space. There are even apps and audio tools that use tones or binaural beats to help stimulate specific brainwave patterns. While these tools aren't magic, they can provide a consistent auditory structure that your brain learns to associate with focus. The point isn't the audio itself. It's the habit of using sound as a cue to enter a learning state. The more consistently you use those cues, the faster your brain responds. On the balance side, the training is even more direct. The vestibular system thrives on movement and spatial challenge, activities that require you to maintain equilibrium, like standing on one foot with your eyes closed, using a balance board, or even slow, controlled head movements, stimulate the inner ear and strengthen the connection between body and brain. These exercises don't take long, and they can be done in just a few minutes each day, but they have a real impact. You're training your body to become more aware of space, to adjust faster, and to send more precise signals to the brain, all of which support better focus. You can even incorporate this into your morning routine. A few minutes of slow head tilts, standing balance drills, or walking with deliberate posture while listening to steady music can prime your system for a more focused day. It might not feel like much at first, but these subtle practices add up. They're teaching your nervous system that it's safe, stable, and ready to learn. That message changes how the brain approaches everything else, from attention to memory to decision-making. There's also a benefit to doing this kind of sensory training before high-focus tasks. Just like warming up before a workout, engaging your hearing and balance systems prepares the brain for cognitive effort. It sets the tone for mental clarity. And because these systems are trainable, the more you use them this way, the more responsive they become. The key here is consistency. You don't need complicated routines or advanced equipment. You just need small, repeatable behaviors that challenge these systems and remind the brain that it's supported from the ground up. When your body feels stable and your senses are sharp, your mind is far more likely to perform at its best. It's one thing to understand how hearing and balance influence focus and learning, but it's another to make that knowledge part of your daily life. The truth is, none of these systems operate in isolation. Your environment, your routines, even the way you transition between activities, all of it either supports or interferes with how these systems function. So the real challenge is integration. How do you structure your day to support auditory and vestibular engagement in a way that enhances your ability to focus absorb information and retain it. It starts with awareness. Begin noticing how sound affects your mental state. Is the environment you're working in too quiet, too chaotic, or just stimulating enough to help you focus? Try adjusting it. Maybe a low hum of white noise or soft lyric-free music is what helps you drop into a more focused state. Pay attention to how you feel when you start your day with movement compared to when you don't. If a 5-minute walk or even some gentle balancing activity helps you think more clearly afterward, that's your system responding. The body gives feedback all the time. We just have to learn how to listen to it. You can also time your sensory inputs to match the type of focus you need. For deep, sustained work, start with movement and sound that engage your vestibular and auditory systems in a calm but alerting way. For brainstorming or creative thinking, try more dynamic movement paired with rhythm. And when it's time to consolidate learning, don't underestimate the value of structured silence. Giving your brain space without input allows the nervous system to recalibrate and store what you've taken in. Even something as simple as posture matters. The way you sit or stand influences how your inner ear communicates with the brain. Staying upright and aligned doesn't just look alert, it actually supports your ability to be alert. Over time, these small adjustments create a kind of internal structure, one that signals to your brain, we're ready, we're engaged, we're focused. The goal isn't to micromanage every moment. It's to build a rhythm into your life that aligns with how your nervous system works best. That's when focus becomes more effortless. That's when learning becomes more natural. Because you're no longer fighting distraction, you're designing your day to support your biology. And that's where real, lasting improvement begins. So when we step back and look at all of this, the role of hearing, the power of balance, the synergy between movement and sound, and the ability to train these systems deliberately, it becomes clear that focus and learning aren't just mental skills. They're full body experiences. Your brain isn't operating in a vacuum. It's constantly interpreting signals from your senses to decide whether you should engage, retreat, or simply endure. When you understand that, you gain control. You can start shaping your environment, your habits, and your state moment by moment to work for you, not against you. Focus becomes less about forcing attention and more about creating the conditions that allow it to emerge. And when those conditions are right, learning stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like momentum.